It's a joy to be with you this morning. And Dharma Devi sends her love. She is not with us this morning. She's a little under the weather, but she's doing
Um,
fine. So I'm sorry that she couldn't join. She really wanted to be here with us.
well,
Uh,
our prayers for you.
thank you. Thank you. Well, I wanted to start with a whisper because this topic is a deeply inspiring and deep one. Truth invites, it never commands. And I found this whisper from eternity. If you're not familiar, I'm sure most of you are, but these are Yogananda's prayer demands. And this one is called Make Me Silent, that I may eloquently converse with thee. Wandering through forests of incessant searching, I arrived at the mystery door which conceals thy presence. I knocked loudly on this door of silence with persistent blows of faith. At last the door opened, and I beheld thee resting on thy altar of glorious visions. I stood with restless gaze, waiting for thee to speak. Thy creation making voice was inaudible. At last a deep stillness stole upon me and taught me in whispers the language of angels. With the lisping voice of my newborn freedom, I tried to speak. Suddenly, the lights in thy temple wrote brilliantly in letters of light. In my little chamber of quietness, I am ever at rest. I never speak now, but with the voice of silence. Through my silence, O divine lover, converse thou eloquently with me. I thought this whisper was so apropos for the topic because we're coming up on Swami Kriyananda's spiritual anniversary on September 12th, this Tuesday, when he met his guru, our guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. And if you recall from that story, Swamiji had just put his parents on this boat. His father was working as a geologist for ESSO at the time. And he was in New York City and he traveled to Midtown Manhattan area and found himself in a bookstore, Doubleday Duran. And he found this mysterious book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And he opened it and he read that little introductory dedication page dedicated to an American saint. And if I'm sure many of you recall this story, Swami thought, ha, an American saint. And he closed the book and he left the bookstore. And as he was walking down Fifth Avenue or whatever it was there in New York City, he said he felt a force magnetically drawing him back to the bookstore. And we all know where that story has led to. It's led to us being here together for this Sunday satsang. Truth invites, it never commands. There is a magnetic force of divine love that drew Swami Kriyananda to his guru through the autobiography. In fact, remember Yogananda asked Swami Kriyananda later, how did you like my book? And he said, oh, I loved it, sir. It was wonderful. And Yogananda replied, that's because it had my vibrations in it. And I suspect all of us, in one way or another, have been drawn magnetically to the divine vibrations of Yogananda through the autobiography of a yogi. He originally was going to call that book The Yogi Christ of India. And in fact, there's that chapter, Babaji, the Yogi Christ of modern India. That's one of the chapters in the autobiography. I'm sharing that because he is reminding us of our divine potential And this is the way that Divine Mother and the great masters and the saints work. It's this loving invitation. Yogananda tells his story when he met Sri Yukteswar, which was in Varanasi. He was in that ashram and he got called to do that errand. And he had those, the groceries for the ashram, and he felt himself again when he turned being magnetically drawn to this saint. And that's where he met Sri Yukteswar. So again, an example of truth invites, it never commands. I know when I first met Swami Kriyananda, I had this experience of truth invites, it never commands. I was actually in New York City at that time, and Swami was coming from Europe, from Italy, to America. And because of his health at that time, he, instead of flying, he took this big cruise ship, and he traveled with a few friends, and he came in there to the port in New York City. And I had never met him. He didn't know me from Adam. He didn't know me at all. And he was giving a program that weekend in the Ananda, Rhode Island community. And this was my first conversation with Swamiji. And it was very simple. He asked me a question, and it was just 4 words. He looked at me and just very sweetly and simply said, "Will you be coming?" And I was so awestruck because here I was working in New York City, which is a very, we could say, commanding type of environment, not a lovingly inviting environment, which is much more about, I had been in a sales training, I think later, just prior that week, that month, and people saying, you got to close, you've got to ask for the deal, this kind of thing. And here I met Swamiji, and it was the sweetest. I thought, wow, he closed me by opening my heart. You see what I mean? Will you be coming? And I replied, of course, with an enthusiastic yes, I will be coming. And I've reflected on that moment because I had already been a Kriyaban at that time. But in many ways, I feel like that was the first act of discipleship in my life. Saying, yes, I will be coming, sir. Remember, these are the keys that God is. It's like this book. We all know this book, Whispers from Eternity. God is like that, right? He's just the silent whisper. He's the beauty and fragrance of the flowers. He's not commanding his greatness upon us. He's given us what? It's part of his greatness. He's given us this gift of free will, and it's ours to use. And so we, like the reading was sharing, it's up to us if we want to have an exile or how long our exile is, or if we're choosing the path to inner freedom. In the autobiography, there's a very inspiring line that Yogananda says, once he wills, he is set to the path of freedom. We have to hold on to these divine truths that our desires have to be fulfilled. And that's why really one of the most important things for us to do as devotees is to cultivate the desire for God alone. Because Divine Mother is asking for our love, but we are the only ones that can give it. I remember another experience with Swami Kriyananda where people had, I'm sure you've had this experience, you have a question and you want to ask Swami a question. And I was with Dharma Devi and she had a question and I had a question. We were going to this satsang with Swami. Let's be sure to ask Swami these questions. And we enter into the satsang with Swamiji, and we were so enveloped in that spirit of divine love and bliss and blessings that just all questions just vanished. It's like Ramakrishna used to say, the bumblebee, it makes a lot of noise, but when it sucks at the nectar, it goes silent. The questions that come are coming from a lower level of our consciousness when we can be drawn into that magnet of God's love. There are no questions. Swami wrote a beautiful song. Maybe you've played it there or heard it. It's called Why. It's a question. And he's asking about uh, it, it's a story of a tender maid, and she has all these questions that her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was why. And the end of the song, it goes, uh, one night, the secret of love stole into her heart. Love then possessed her and made her his own. In love, she at last learned why. All of our questions will be answered. It's like how Yogananda described the transfixing touch of divine love. And we need to, of course, how do we get there? How do we move in that direction of unity and perfection in divine love and bliss? That's where the Gita, part of the reading, is coming in today. It's saying, of what avail is suppression? Krishna is saying, work with your nature, right? This is paramount to the yogi's attitude and approach to life, that we work with our divine nature. We don't suppress it. So how do we do that? Well, first, we have to learn to accept. We have to learn to accept ourselves. We have to learn to accept what life is giving us. There's a beautiful song. All of really the philosophy is in the songs that Swami and Master gave us. There's another song Swami wrote called Say Thank You. It's a children's song. You may not have heard it. And it goes, I'll try to sing it for you. It goes something like this. If you want to fly like the butterflies, fly like the butterflies, fly like the butterflies. If you want to fly like the butterflies, look at the world, say thank you. It's a very simple and sweet melody.
Mm.
And it goes on, if you want to flow like the rivers flow, look at the world, say thank you. If you want to fly like the birdies fly, look at the world, say thank you. But isn't it, bless you, isn't it true that a lot of times we're looking at the world and we're saying, dang you, instead of thank you? You know what I mean? We're rejecting. We're saying, no, not you. I don't want this. But this is why Yogananda said it's one of the most important attitudes for us on the spiritual path is sincerity. If we can sincerely, genuinely say, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, for whatever comes to us, then we can navigate whatever trials that we'll face. And one of the other important attitudes in that saying thank you is being enthusiastic. Master said that our enthusiasm should be like it should increase. It shouldn't decrease. It should increase over time as we're on the path. Do you remember that talk? Maybe you've heard some of his audio talks. He said, you must not let the symphony of your life go unfinished. That there's a great song of God, right? And you have a unique song to sing to Divine Mother and to share the love of God. The thing that again separates us is when this veil starts to come over us, and these fancy frozen boundaries of separation, of the meannesses of the heart, as Sri Teshwar said. There was a very inspiring story I just read of the Narayan apparitions. I'm sure you've heard of them in Medjugorje. Divine Mother came in Fatima in the early 1900s to these children in a village, and in 1981 came to these 6 children in Medjugorje. And these apparitions are still happening for the visionaries to this day. In fact, Swami Kriyananda, towards the end of his life, went on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje, and he met one of the visionaries, Vika, and he said it was one of the highlights of his life. But I'm sharing this story. I think it was one of the visionaries. I don't remember her name. There was so 50 million pilgrims have gone to Medjugorje since 1981. It's become, a pilgrimage spot for Divine Mother. And this Serbian, now this was former Yugoslavia. There were Croats, there were Serbs, there were Muslims, Catholics. It was under communist rule. It was a very war-torn area, and this war broke out over a 4-year period that killed 100,000 people. It was horrific. But amidst that, Divine Mother was coming and sharing her blessings in that region. And as more and more pilgrims came, for healing, some pilgrims were healed physically, but of course the deeper healing was the spiritual healing that happened. This one instance, there was a Serbian family, and they were considered, gypsies by some of the Croats or the Catholic Croatians. They had a 10-year-old son that was crippled. I don't know what his illness was, and they brought him to Medjugorje. And he was healed miraculously. And here's where the story for us comes in. This Croatian Catholic priest was kind of up in arms around this Serbian gypsy boy being healed. And he asked one of the visionaries, well, how can Divine Mother heal him? He's a gypsy. He's not Catholic. And the visionary said that Divine Mother looked at this priest. The priest couldn't see Divine Mother. She looked at this priest for a very long time, not in anger, not a normal worldly reaction of self-indignation or whatever it may be, but with this loving tolerance. And she said to the visionary, tell this priest and tell everyone, all are my children. It doesn't matter if one is Catholic or not. It's the way that one lives. And this is the important thing for us. In order for that invitation of truth to steal upon our being, we need to be open to that truth. And what is that truth? That all was made from love, and that we are all united in that love. And as soon as we act in ways that are in diametric opposition to it, it's painful for us, whether we realize it or not. And this is part of the divine mystery that God has. We can't understand life through the intellect. That's why for the devotee master said to go more by intuitive faith, right? But we have to cultivate that faith, and that is where our inner communion and our meditation comes into play. I was so grateful to be part of your meditation and your satsang this morning. I could feel our connection in God's spirit when we were meditating. This is one of the delusions that's being destroyed right in this age is this delusion of space, that we're separate. That Swami Sri Yukteswar talked about. Dwapara Yuga it'll annihilate the delusion of space, and here we are connecting through cyberspace. But the most important space for us to connect with God is in our hearts, and is to open ourselves to that invitation from Divine Mother and the Masters. And just like if you would invite friends over to your home, you clean up. maybe if your place is messy, it inspires you to clean up. You set the table, you put out flowers, you make that environment inviting for them. And we never know how one act of kindness will touch and change another life. I'll share with you one other story, and I'll close with this, and we can open it up for any questions and sharing. This is a true story Gandhi told, that this man, he lived alone, and his home was a pigsty. He had dishes in his sink literally piled up, and they were almost touching the ceiling. You couldn't see his table, papers everywhere. It was just a complete mess. And he went to work one day, and a new woman arrived at his work, and he fell in love with her. They just had this deep soul attraction to one another. And they went for a walk, but he never brought her home because he didn't want her to see his home. And they were walking, and one day they were walking in the park somewhere by his home, and she picked a rose, and she gave this rose to him, just a sweet, sincere offering from the heart to him. And it deeply moved him, the way that she gave it and the sweetness that it represented. So he held this rose like as sacred, and he brought it home without her after the walk. And he was looking for a vase, something like here on the altar, to put the rose in so that it could be held in its proper place. Well, he had to start cleaning his sink. So he started cleaning all those dishes, looking for a glass or a vase or something that he could use for this rose. And he began cleaning and cleaning and cleaned up the sink. And then finally he had a glass. The sink was clean. He put the rose in the glass with water. But then his table was a mess. And so he cleaned up the entire table as well. And it just propelled him to clean up his entire living space. One rose, one act of kindness. Like Swamiji said, one spark of inspiration can be the faggot that ignites into a bonfire of devotion and bliss. So whatever that is for each one of us, let's follow that. That's the divine invitation from the great ones, saying, come and bathe in my holy presence. And if we follow that chant, if we follow that song, if we follow that divine inspiration from the scriptures, and we seek it in the cave of silence in our soul, all of our questions will be answered. And we will know that the truth has always been that silent, loving truth calling us home to Divine Mother and the great ones. Blessings to you, great souls.
Thank you so much, Narayan. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. And
Okay, wonderful.
Is that Mark?
Yeah, it's Mark. And
Mark with Mike.
yes. Yep, Mark and Mike. And it's the Mark and Mike show. So so we'll transition over into our question and answer and sharing time. And so I'd like to encourage everybody who's in Zoom to go ahead and open up your cameras, if you would, so that it's always so much more inviting to talk to faces than black boxes with names on them. So if you would go ahead and open up your cameras, and we'll be coming off of our Facebook feed now. So any friends who might be out there on Facebook, please join us on at our Zoom on our Zoom session. You can find that by going to our website, Ananda Dallas or Ananda Texas, either one, .org, and going to the Sunday service link that is there in the Sunday service description. And Hugh, in order to take us off of Facebook, just click on where up there where it says live up at the top of the video screen. Top of the main video screen. There you go. And there should be an arrow there. I can't quite see it from here, but there should be an arrow there that will allow you to end the yeah. There we go. Very good. So we're off Facebook now, and we have a group who are doing a women's retreat in Oklahoma, and I see they've opened up their camera now. So everybody and all you Oklahoma folks, go ahead and wave and say hello. They've been doing a retreat this weekend, and so I think they've got another 24 hours or so left of retreat. And so yeah, they're all coming in. So I'd like to open up open the floor for questions and or sharing. And anybody here in the room, if you'd like to ask a question, we have a microphone right here. You can come up and just scoot in beside me and Mike here, and if you want to be on camera. If you don't, then I guess you can ask your question from off camera, but faces are always nice. So I'm going to shut up now and see who wants to begin.
This is all just an invitation.
We'll jump in. We're eager to. Hi. It's a little hectic here. We just finished our breakfast, and we've got 6 gals here trying to herd the cats in so that you can see us all. But your talk was so touching, and we just really thank you for joining us, and we're so grateful that we're able to tune in here. We've been having a very blessed time, a deep time out in nature and just building community and sharing. It's been very special, but this has really been great to be able to tune in. Although I do want to say one thing to Mark. We could never get it on the flat screen with the HDMI cable, so we are only looking at it from the small screen.
Oh, okay, well,
how that works.
I couldn't help you out with that this morning.
But we can see you all very well. You're nice and close to your small screen. Thank you.
Well, anyway, we thank you for coming. I wondered if you could speak a little bit about Crystal Clarity and tell us the latest that's going on there and that kind of thing.
Oh, thank you. Well, first, Maitri, thank you for the invitation. And I'm so glad to be with you and part of the women's retreat there. Yeah, well, Crystal Clarity, Dharma Devi and I, it's keeping us quite busy. This month in September, we've released a new book called Moments of Truth, which are little seeds from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. If you haven't read that book, that's a treasure. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, explained by Paramahansa Yogananda and then edited by Swami Kriyananda. And so this little book we came out with in September are little gems from the Rubaiyat and from the commentary. And then next month in October, we have another fun new release by Nayaswami Hriman. Some of you may know him. Nayaswami Padma and Hriman lead the community in Seattle and Washington. And he has written a book called The Once and Future Christ, where East meets West. And it's a universal approach to Christ consciousness, to Master's teachings on the second coming of Christ. And it's a real gem. So that's a fun new release we have coming out. And yeah, there's so much more I could say, Maitri, but I think crystal clarity, why it's a real privilege to serve through crystal clarity, is because it reminds me every day of that story I told you of when it all started with Swami Kriyananda finding the autobiography of a yogi. I know that's how my journey began, was finding the autobiography of a yogi. So any way we can get the books out there, that they're like these little pinpoints of light, and people find them. And of course, now people are finding things online, and we're doing more with audiobooks too. We're trying to, every time we come out with a new release, almost everyone, we're trying to have an audiobook with it as well, because many people don't read. Some people listen to books, or they're traveling, or it's more convenient that way to have it in audiobook format. I will share with you one last thing in regards to crystal clarity, which is this book. Can you see it? The Essence of Self-Realization.
Mm-hmm.
You probably know it or have it. And I was going to share, I completely forgot this reading from it. A disciple was digging a cesspool at the master's desert retreat. He kept on digging all day long without stopping to see how far he had come. That evening, to his amazement, he found that he had dug a deep hole. When Paramahansa Yogananda saw what he had accomplished, he said approvingly, "That is how the devotee must seek God, continually digging, without looking to see how far he has come. Then one day, suddenly, he will find himself there." As Lahiri Mahashaya used to tell his disciples, "Banat, banjai, doing, at last done." I wanted to share that because, well, I love that excerpt just for one, but I was going to share it in light of this topic of truth invites and never commands. If we get drawn into that tractor beam, it's one of the ways is being enthusiastic. And remember that word enthusiasm comes from the root in theos, meaning in God. And so that's why Swamiji gave us those, super conscious living exercise. And Master would say, "How feels everyone? Awake and ready. How is everyone? Awake and ready." It's just important. And even when we don't feel awake and ready, which of course happens to all of us, like, remember what Shakespeare said, "Assume a virtue, though you have it not." And act enthusiastic and you'll be enthusiastic. And what you all are doing at the retreat there and at the Sangha in Dallas is vital. Master said, environment is stronger than willpower. And our hearts and our devotion, he said, are influenced greatly by our company. And he said that it's actually one of the things that will be the inflection point for the heart to descend into outwardness, restlessness, and emotion, or ascend into spirit. The company we keep, being with other devotees, like you're doing at the retreat, like you're doing in Dallas. It is this, we think, oh, hey, we're just out in a barn in Oklahoma. I don't know where you are, but we think we're just doing some little thing. It's actually the most important thing happening in the world today. That's why Swami said, I think Ananda will look back and say it was one of the most important movements. The small community solution. We're not going to find the answers outwardly. We're going to find, it's another Swami song, "Sail with Me to Capri." You should listen to that. It's beautiful. Find the key to freedom, happiness within. It's the very last line of that song. The key to freedom is happiness within. It's finding God in here. The world outside is never going to be perfect. It's going to go up and down. It's just the way of the world. Our role is to uplift consciousness, because when we're in a higher state of consciousness, then we see solutions everywhere. When we're in a lower state of consciousness, like, we can become complaining Janes. We don't want that. We want to be aspiring spirits. And that's why what you all are doing is so, so important, and supporting each other. And this is, I'm so grateful to Ananda. And I don't mean that as an organization. I mean, we're a divine spiritual family. This is a family that we're all a part of. Master said it. You're not connected to a print. Here, I'm serving a crystal clarity. He said, you're not connected to a printing press. You are connected to a divine line of masters. We have to remember that. And like he said in the autobiography, as a disciple of Sri Yukteswar, I could intuit his God realization. And as a disciple, I was determined to press my advantage. So we have this golden opportunity. Let's press our advantage.
It's beautiful. I wanted it. What came to mind to me today was about the acts of kindnesses, and in the perspective of that, a lot of times, like in achievement, we want to get some big accomplishment done. You know, that's sort of the modus operandi that sometimes we're trained in, you know, figure out and get this big thing done. But in terms of like acts of kindness, that is there a small opportunity for an act of kindness is something that's been occurring to me of late. Is there a small thing? Because that, just like the example you gave with the rose, a small thing, all the energy of love that we have, even in a small thing, and a small act of giving or act of kindness, flows through us, helps us, and potentially helps other people. So I'm reminding myself of late to be open to intuiting the small acts of kindness. And it's sort of freeing. You know, it isn't all about some big old thing. And it's the perspective, like I just love what you just said about the person in charge of crystal clarity. It's not about the books. I mean, only in Ananda can you hear this from people. The most important thing that the outwardly would seem to be is not the outward thing.
Well, Swami, thank you, Mike, for sharing that. That's beautiful. And I'll take that to heart as well, about intuiting this small acts of kindness. I want to share in response to that. Two things came to my mind. One, Swami gave us, that was the founding principle, one of the founding principles of Ananda. People are more important than things. All of our quote unquote ministries are to be in service to individual souls. That's what we're doing at Crystal Clarity. That's what you all are doing at Ananda Dallas. And what you shared as well, Mike, it's important. I enjoy reading about and hearing about near-death experiences. Maybe you've read books like Life After Life, Raymond Moody, and there's a lot of new books. There was a brain doctor named Eben Alexander, and he got spinal meningitis, and he was in a coma for a week, and he had this incredible near-death experience. And now he's become this proponent of meditation and consciousness because he was brain dead. And people said, well, you know, the brain, some skeptics said, well, there is no such thing as consciousness. It's just a figment of the brain. And he's said, well, no, my brain was shut down for a week and there's something beyond it. But I'm sharing that because, Mike, one, this is another person that had a near-death experience. I can't remember who they were. But they said when they met the light, they met God, Christ, Buddha, whoever it was for them, they said, I'm most impressed with your spontaneous acts of kindness. Those are the things. And in fact, this one boy said that he had his near-death experience, and then he remembered back when he was 12 years old, he was traveling cross country or something, and they had to stop the car, and he had to get some water for his family and bring these buckets back to the car. And he had 2 buckets, and he stopped and he saw this tree, and it really looked like it needed some water, and he poured some water on this tree. And then he went back, and it was just this simple act of kindness to this tree. And when he had his near-death experience, and his life review, he felt the whole universe rejoice through that simple act of kindness to the tree. So thank you. I think we think, what the important things we think, like here, running Crystal Clarity, we're leading a center in Dallas, and we get caught up in the work, not to forget that people are more important than things, and the organization is there to support the individuals. I'll never forget, I'll share a quick story. When I was on the East Coast, I was part of Ananda, Rhode Island, and Nayaswami Jaya and Sadhana Devi were there at that time. And I was learning the path of Kriya Yoga, and I had just met Swami, that story I told you. And I went to Ananda Village to take yoga teacher training. And my goal was to come back and help Ananda, Rhode Island. We had a meditation group in New York City. And I was very much thinking, we got to get this out there and share this with everyone. And I was invited while I was taking yoga teacher training here at the village. The people at Crystal Clarity called me and said, well, how would you like to serve through Crystal Clarity? We could use some help. And that would mean, moving to Ananda Village and leaving the East Coast and all that. And I was like, thank you, but no thanks. I'm part of Ananda on the East Coast. I'm loyal to Ananda there, and, I'm with Jaya and all this. So I called Jaya from Ananda Village. And I had this conversation with Jaya. I'll never forget it. And he said, well, if you were going to leave your job, because I was working in New York at the time, and come up to Rhode Island, he said, I would actually recommend that you go to Ananda Village. And I was like, really? Well, why would you recommend that? Here I was, I'm enthusiastic for the East Coast and all this. And he said, well, you see, you'll be dyed in the wool. And as soon as he said that, I understood what he meant. He was saying, you'll be immersed, you'll go deep into the spiritual path. You'll have this opportunity to dive deep if you go to the village. And if you're feeling that sense that you're going to leave and go anywhere, I'd recommend you go there. In other words, people are more important than things. He cared about my spiritual growth more than growing the work. You see what I mean? And how that deeply touched me. And I thank Jaya for that silently every day.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Jaya is a special friend of mine and Maitri's, because he was the minister. He and he and Sadhana Devi were the ministers that married us 23 years ago, and
beautiful, Mark.
And it was such a beautiful ceremony, and there was so much energy from them that even my very Catholic mother, who came to the wedding, later on commented to me, I never expected this. She said, that's the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen. And so anyway, Jaya was a really special part of that. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, and you've touched on this a little bit, is, of all the things that you can be doing for Ananda worldwide, it seems like Crystal Clarity is possibly the most worldly of all of them, because you've got a product, you're putting that product out there, you're trying to sell product, and I just wonder, how you maintain the balance between the reading of Martha and Mary came to mind to me this morning, and the idea of making sure that everything that you're doing is all in service. I'm wondering how you achieve that balance.
Yeah, that's a great question. Will you give me one moment? I need to let someone into the room here, and
Okay,
I will
sure.
come back to
Okay,
that.
no worries.
We're being very informal here this morning.
Hi. If if you need to come in, you can come in. I'm sorry. I know I did a boo-boo.
You did a big boo-boo.
I can go outside. I couldn't get into the EO.
No, you just shoot me an email.
I know. I apologize.
Okay.
I
just let us slap my hand because I did it last week.
I'm still zooming.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Oh, well, let's go tell them how bad he is.
Moving as a verb.
Yep.
Sorry, friends. My boo-boo was I'm in the Temple of Light, and I'm in the wisdom classroom of the Temple of Light because I couldn't get into the expanding light little
I thought you
boutique area.
were. It looked familiar. That would have been
And
my
I
guess.
didn't let Lisa, who's like the temple mata, she's like the temple mom here. I didn't let her know. And then, so anyway, that part of me, that's what that was. But great question, Mark. Our whole path is about balance, balancing meditation with activity. Master said, we know this phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, be calmly active and actively calm. So personally, the way I strike the balance is a strong sadhana. If I am contacting and communing with God in my meditation, and I can hold on to that no matter what I'm doing, it's going to be in the right spirit. But like Swamiji would say, as soon as I start to feel peace is my bottom line, so to speak. So it's not, there's always going to be the next project. There's plenty of opportunities for service. Holding on to the right spirit is essential. And then of course you realize, well, it's not just with crystal clarity, it's your whole life. I mean, am I holding on to kindness and sweetness in the way that I'm relating to Dharma Devi? If I find that I'm getting irritable or something's wrong with me, and I need to, a lot of times, if we're trying to do too much, that's when we get out of balance. Nayaswami Jyotish shared this, that the strengths of different cultures can also be their weaknesses. Like in Italy, it's very open-hearted. I'm from an Italian background, very loving, very open-hearted, but it can also be very emotional, right? You've got like opera singers and you have St. Francis. In America, we're very driven, and there's a lot of willpower, and we've got do-it-yourself stores. But that can be, of course, when that drive is taken too far, it gets us out of balance. So I've been feeling more and more that also this move back to the village for Dharma Devi and I, is about the golden middle path. Babaji talks about it, right? Spiritual efficiency, material efficiency, combining into the golden middle path.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to be quiet here for a moment and make sure that anybody else who's on who has a question or a comment, please.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to come up to the microphone? Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk today. I'm Mallory. So you were in a huge metropolitan area like we are, and we're having some challenges getting people to come in person. And I wonder if you have any tips on that. I mean, I know we need to be advertising social media and all that, but do you have any tips on that?
Thanks, Mallory. Yeah, it's a great question. In the post-pandemic era, getting people to come back in person. I think it's like the topic from today's Sunday satsang, truth invites, it never commands. So just to put the invitations out there in a loving and magnetic way, and the more positive energy that you're putting out there, your energy is going to draw, and like attracts like. All of Krishna's soldiers were like Krishna. So no matter if you have 2 there this morning, or you have 20, or you have 200, we need to keep in mind as well what Master said, that I'm drawn to, I love a soul, I prefer a soul to a crowd, and I love a crowd of souls, like he would say. But also, he said at another point, one moon shines more light than all the stars. So we could have a mega church, but if we had one God realized soul, he would be shining more light. So we're staying true to our path in this way and sharing it, just like you are with Raja Yoga. And get those repeat offenders back in there, like Mark was inviting people that have taken it. You may have taken Raja Yoga 20 times. We had many repeat offenders in LA that would take the course again and again. Can always re-inspire yourself. So just finding any ways that you can creatively share the teachings in new ways. Also, there might be someone in the community there that's drawn towards education. That could be an opportunity for education for life. There might be someone that's drawn more towards business and leadership. That might be an opportunity for the art of supportive leadership, and so on. So to just keep your feelers open as well for how you can invite people to participate, because that's the key. It's like Ananda's like a gymnasium for self-realization, and it's a big gym, and there's like different parts of the playground. There's indoor, there's outdoor, there's climbers, there's people that are playing with the salamanders. We've got some of you know Virani here, who runs the Yagoda, the goat dairy at Ananda. If ever any goat dairy farmer brought joy into farming and loving goats, it's Virani. I mean, she is so joy filled, and you drink her milk and that cheese, and it's filled with prana, it's filled with life, it's filled with joy. So just whatever it is, way that you feel drawn to serve, to do that, and then to look for ways that you can invite people in to find their way.
Yeah, we just watched Finding Happiness again on Friday night. We do a thing on Friday nights called Fun Friday, and this last Friday was movie night, and we showed Finding Happiness, and I think that scene with Virani is just like one of the is
it's one of the highlights.
Everybody remembers that scene,
And we also saw Dharma Devi. She's in that movie for sure.
She's in that movie.
It was like, oh yeah, well, a couple of days, yeah.
I think she just started online with Ananda, so it's
she did. That's the funny story. We had just started online with Ananda, and then 3 months later, and we had gotten married, and in May, online with Ananda started in July, Ananda's anniversary, and then Swami asked us to move to LA that July, like the next day. So
ride the whirlwind.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
All right.
Well, great souls.
Time is coming to a close. I'd like to make sure that anybody who would like to ask a question, I see Maitri coming up to the camera, so maybe she has a question.
Let Padma Pada, and then we'll come on again.
Thanks. I just want to make a quick comment, something that really touched me. It's very touching. I've been taking notes. Thank you so much for your magnetism and sharing this. But I had never connected the dots between Yogananda seeing his guru and then proceeding on and then coming back magnetized. And Swami, I guess I didn't know that part where he left the bookstore and then
Very
was
simple.
magnetized.
Mm-hmm.
It just really helps me to remember to listen deeper when I have some automatic responses to things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is really the deeper soul correctness here, instead of, you know, the habitual yeses and nos and this is not what I do. So thank you for that. That's a good takeaway for me.
Good.
Wonderful, and thank you once again, Nayaswami Narayan, and such beautiful sharing, such upliftment and enthusiasm, and just awakening and upliftment. And just have a beautiful day. Give our love to your wife, and it's so wonderful to connect with you from the Temple of Silence there.
Well, I have one more quick question. I hope it's a quick
We have
one.
one here too. I was going to butt in.
Okay, go ahead, Maitri.
Supriya.
So really, it was just a comment. Hi, Supriya here.
Hi, Supriya.
In Oklahoma, we're certainly not in a barn.
We are not in a barn.
We're in
Yeah, come in.
come. But here's what I wanted to say. What I was hearing you say when you were speaking before all these wonderful comments, questions, things, I don't know, I was thinking, listen how simple our spiritual path is. And I've had this thought many, many, many times over these years. And then I make it complicated because I have to do it different. I have to do it better. I have to do more. I have to whatever, knowing that Master's flowing through us, right, as channels. But I kept hearing it somehow. What I heard was about the simplicity. And then I heard about the comments from people. And it was all about the simple act of kindness, the simplicity. And we had a sharing on nature last night with our cards, right? We all had one, and we were sharing about the card we had chosen. And one of the things was, you know, if to smile, just to smile. And then we were talking about, I believe it was Yogananda who said, you know, if you're having trouble smiling, just put your hands here and do this. So laughing about that last night. And if you want to be enthusiastic, just at least act enthusiastic, and then God knows and is going to help you to just get that energy flowing, whether it's and it's really so simple. This again and again and again, and I hope I'm getting it a little more before I leave the body. So
Oh, thank you, Supriya, for sharing that, and great to see you and everyone there.
I wanted to add, you told your story about talking to Jaya and he told you to go to the village. Well, I was at the village and he told me to go to Dallas. So
Yeah, you know, it's individual. The true teaching's individual. Read that chapter in The New Path, Swami's autobiography. There's no one way. Yeah.
he said, I think you're meant to be out in that world now. And I was like, oh, really? I don't feel like it. Yeah, it is very individual, and it is all about that deep listening. And I loved what Padmapada just added to that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful Padmapada. Well, we certainly need to have you back with your other half.
Yeah, and we would love to come, God willing, in person. So once we get settled here next year, we're going to start to do some more traveling. But if we can't come in person, we'll definitely do another Zoom together.
Well, how about both?
Okay, we'll sort it out.
I just wrote that down.
Make a mental note.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
So the one quick question I had is another crystal clarity question is back in February, we were at the village for inner renewal retreat. And Jyotish shared with us a handout that was, which I believe was part of the basis of a book that he was working on called The Heart of Seva, I believe was the title.
Yeah.
And I wondered if there's any word on when that might be coming out.
It's okay. There's that is a really good question, Mark. I think it'll be up to divine inspiration, and when Jyotish grounds it more deeply. I could see it coming out in the next year or so. He's not finished the manuscript. He's got basically the entire outline, but not the whole meat of the manuscript. But that will be a beautiful one. Yeah, it's like a working title of Ananda Seva, the joy of selfless service, transcending the ego. Yeah, it's along those lines.
Yeah.
It'll be a beautiful book.
Well, I've definitely been looking forward to it. So hopefully it won't be that much longer. I didn't realize my manuscript wasn't done. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I think somebody's wanting the room, right? And so we're
I'm going to sign off. I'm going to sign off, and thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mike, Supriya, Maitri, Eric. Great to see you. I haven't seen you in years, and many blessings. And I look forward to being with you again, either online or in person.
Thank you, Narayan.
God bless you.
Namaste.
God bless. Have a wonderful day.
Om Guru. Bye bye.